was we said no debunking. Like just don't do it. Like even though you might be even trying to help people understand what happened, we know that not everything has to have a prosaic explanation, even if you can come up with one. So let's just leave those for other spaces. But the problem, of course, is that this means that, you know, we're not filtering out what people are saying at all. So someone could come in there and just completely make up a wild story and post it, and we don't remove it. We just leave it there. We let the community engage with it and however they want to do that. You know, short of saying, I think you lied or whatever. Now, if we do have evidence that someone's like used AI or something to create a story, we'll remove it. We'll ask the person, could you please just post this in your own words? Like, it's fine if the grammar's not right or everything. Just, we want this to feel as authentic as possible. And so that's one of the biggest things that I think we've done. Now, in terms of like being an active moderator, really, it's just like, are people being rude to each other? Like, we won't allow that. There's certain keywords that we associate with problematic behavior, and so we just watch for those. Like, we don't censor them, but we're just notified. Like, hey, can you just look at this and make sure it looks okay? So we try and keep it pretty hands-off. And like, for the size of the subreddit, we don't have to do a lot of moderation. We try and keep it to a minimum.
So you don't have to scroll through and read every comment or anything like that
no.
in terms of or at least the posts before they. I mean, obviously they go straight up, but sometimes, like with I know with the UFO subreddit, there might be if you don't do something right off the bat, they might get removed in half an hour if there's a moderator who. I guess.
Well, we have there's what's called the auto moderator, where you can tell it look for this and then perform an action. So you could theoretically remove it, but what we do is we filter it. We'll put it into the queue to have someone look at it. So if there's certain keywords that we know, well, one of the things we had to do is we had to say, please don't post body marks. Put them on a different subreddit that we created. Because when they're here, people cannot help but try and debunk them. Like, everyone wants to solve what could have done that. And it doesn't, you don't ever have enough information to do that accurately. It's just you're engaging the pareidolia pattern matching portion of your brain going, does this look like something I've ever seen before? Yes, then that's probably what it is, which is not really ideal. Right. And you can carry it to great lengths. Like, I think Nick West kind of falls prey to that in a lot of ways. Because all he'll do is he only wants to look at the photos of the videos, and he ignores the other data that he's told exists, by reliable, reputable people. And so it's really hard not to fall victim to that.
Admitted on a recent thing with marriage on Bandcamp that he gets paid.
But I do want to come to his
please do. If I
his aid in this regard.
Yeah.
This had come out before, and really he got funding to help develop this program called SITREP, where you can put in all of these variables for what data you do have for like a known object, and it will try and give you more information about could it have been a plane, or how far away might it have been, or what. Somebody funded that, and part of the deal was that he was not supposed to reveal who. My guess would be something related to Arrow, maybe? But I don't know.
It's still kind of shady.
He does say he's not being paid to propose a specific position. And I believe him on that. I think he's naturally just very resistant to this.
I really appreciate, first of all, the creation of a dedicated safe space intentionally. I think it's a really important thing to have, and we can do more of that in the community, where it's like, this is the parameters as you enter this space, being very clear and transparent about like what expectations are. I wonder a little bit more, the other thing I see within this whole field on certain hot button topics like Jake Barber or the telepathy tapes and such, is that in more mixed forums, which do not explicitly have that kind of no debunking rule, which is ostensibly open to more varied discussions, I see a lot of discussions that start promisingly and then it just seem to devolve into two sides not really hearing one another. And so I wonder, like, how do we set up rules for discussion that allows both people to kind of feel safe? Because I kind of see this in society in general, like we can't come up to kind of a middle ground or even sit with uncomfortable conversations. We just end up polarizing further. So do you have any thoughts on how to do that so that someone that is skeptical and someone that is a believer can have that kind of healthy dialogue?
What's funny, you mentioned the telepathy tapes, because I was recently asked to help moderate that, and I'm doing that for now. And yeah, we're trying to take it back because it had fallen prey to that under the old moderator who could not keep up with the discussion because it was getting so much attention. And we're just telling people, like, don't attack each other. Like, try and remain open-minded, which is much more difficult than you would think it should be. All of psychology research shows people don't change their minds if it goes against your worldview. So we just tell people, like, if you make a claim, ideally provide a source. Doesn't matter, it doesn't have to be the best source in the world, but any source to just show you're not just making up something and saying that it's a fact when it's opinion. And second, just treat people politely. Like, pretend you're at a nice dinner party. Like, if you said certain things, they'd throw you out of the house. We try and say it's the same kind of thing. Just be on your best behavior and polite, and engage with people that way. And it works pretty well.
It's interesting. I think, there's people who are sort of in the game of perception management, or trying to disrupt public dialogue, or those sorts of things. There's like a list of rules to follow on how to break up coherent and cohesive and cooperative conversations where, like, it's basically like, a series of things you can do, like you can complain about things, or you can, kind of have an attitude. It's generally, I've discovered it, like, if you talk about it in the workplace, like if you wanted to stop the work in a factory, say, if you're some sort of, like, subversive person or whatever, it's like you can complain, you can spread bad morale, you can do these steps, and it seems like some of those things are happening in subreddits and other places by design, as if there have been people planted there to cause some of these conversations to totally go off the rails. Do you guys experience that? And if so, how do you handle it, or do you tell? Is there any way that you can defend against that sort of thing if someone who is a real person develops a username and drops into your subreddit, and there's no way to know what their background or agency?
Right, yeah, well, this is a major issue because of the anonymity of the internet. So one of the other subreddits that I was moderating for a while was the Skinwalker Ranch subreddit. And I and the other moderators noticed that there was some really odd behavior that seemed to be coming up over and over again. It was very disruptive, but seemed carefully crafted to, like, not break the rules in an egregious way. And there's a publicly available tool called Reddit Metis, M-E-T-I-S. I think it's also on GitHub. And one of the best features of it is it looks at the past, like, 30 days of a user's post activity and generates a heat map. Like, what hours of the day are they posting? And we started running this on these suspicious users, and we were like, these users are posting often, like, 20 hours a day. People need sleep. Like, you could maybe do that if you're an insomniac or something, but not for, 2 weeks straight. And we kept seeing it over and over again. We were like, something is really suspicious. And so I and a few other moderators created a custom tool, which is not, for public consumption yet. We're hoping at some point we'll get it there. Which allowed us to download more information and start trying to find some of these patterns. And we did. We found a lot of patterns of really suspicious behavior. And as you said, because there's this publicly available kind of PSYOP workbook sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah, a lot of what we were seeing seemed to kind of pull out of that. And the very aggressive skeptic was absolutely one of those kind of personalities that we kept seeing, with the ridicule factor being very high. It's not enough to just criticize something, but you have to be like, anyone who would believe this is.
Yeah, this whole subreddit's going down the tubes. Like, I mean, there's
Yeah, yeah. But one of the other things that we identified is that there was the other position, which was the extreme believer, who just seemed to accept everything, and then they would come out with really wild statements, Now, some of this stuff you hear with the experiencers just because of the nature of the phenomenon itself. Like, if I said everything that had gone through my mind when I was trying to understand this, it would absolutely sound a bit unhinged, I think. Ungrounded, let's call it. So it looked like they were using both sides of it. And then we also identified that these users were engaging with each other a lot of the time. So they weren't just like commenting on a post. They would comment and then they would respond to the comment and respond to the comment. So it was like that was intentionally breaking up the discussions as well. So then the question is, who is doing this? Like, somebody's going to the trouble of either doing this for a living, they're posting 8 hours a day, but if it's 20 or 24 hours a day, it's a bot. Someone is programming bots. Why would anyone program a bot to go argue on a UFO subreddit? Well, so of course the obvious thought there was, could it be something related to the intelligence communities? And everybody's heard the rumors and accusations that the intelligence communities are actively trying to disrupt discussion on these topics just to discourage people from looking into it and taking it seriously. And we got a chance to talk to Kirk McConnell recently, a former member of the Senate Intelligence Committee. He didn't have any specific information, but he was like, yeah, we know that they are participating in social media and they're doing these kinds of things. So it is happening, and we know it's going on. But, I mean, some random moderators, even as a team with custom tools, like trying to fight the intelligence community, with good luck, like, how are we going to deal with that? And so we just tell users, look, just if you see something extreme happening, ignore it. Like, don't even engage with it. Just report it to the moderators and we'll take a look at it and see if we can do anything about it. Otherwise, just like, try not to get caught up in it.
One of the things that... Sorry, go ahead, James.
Just that, like, we all sit around and talk about the state of the UFO community and describe exactly what you're saying is one of the things that we find so irritating about the community. That we're always at each other's throats, that people are always making these wild claims, that people can't get along, that it's a gigantic noise machine and there's no clarity. And that partly is manufactured, is what you're saying. And that sucks. And it's like, I think we all need to realize to some extent that the bad feeling or the bad sense we get from some of the operators or things that are going on in the community isn't really organic to the subject. It's part of what the framing has been built by people who don't really want people to engage in the conversation. And anyone who's floating over the top of the UFO thing and says, oh, I saw this special and it looked really interesting, and then they go on, some forum and they see this conflagration, they're just going to be like, oh, well, yeah, okay, now I remember. These guys are all people. And that's where it's working. And so we, like you said, I think we all need to be aware of that. And I think we need to be more forgiving of the community as a whole, because we have no idea how much of that is just propped up garbage and not actually a result of people, quibbling who have actual opinions and are real people.
Yeah, but at the same time, if people think that a lot of the conversations are not genuine, they're not going to want to participate at all. So it really is a challenge.
Sure it is. Absolutely it is. Yeah.
Well, it's a challenge beyond this community. One of the things that terrifies me about social media in general is its potential for what I would call something like neuro-linguistic programming, or seeds being planted very, very gradually. I don't want to get too political, but like, one of the things that haunts me is, say, the development of QAnon, which didn't come overnight. It happened very, very gradually through planting of things, co-opting of groups, and suggests subtle nudges, and I know one way to avoid it is to refuse to engage, but that doesn't feel like the correct approach either. And it really requires a hell of a lot of discernment and pattern recognition abilities. And in one world, it could be a beautiful sort of training tool to help people really develop intellectual rigor and look at things really critically. But on the other level, it's also playing to very base psychology and fears and sort of subtle hints. I had to get off X myself earlier this year because I could see myself getting to a point where I'd go, hold on, I've landed at a place that seems absolutely ridiculous, but it happened through such little hops of things that just slightly push you outside of your wheelhouse. And, I'm someone that tries to be fairly critically reflective. So it really worries me. And I don't have an answer. I'm curious as to your response as to how do we make sure that we're actually doing things for the benefit of us collectively as a species and not subject to gradual manipulation by something with a hidden hand.
Well, God, I mean, what a complex question.
Yeah.
Um,
In 5 minutes, please.
yeah, 5 minutes.
I'm usually the one who asks those questions, Chris. You're taking my thunder, man. The unanswerable questions, anyway.
Well, I think one of the difficulties here is that we don't have a lot of answers with this subject. Short of, we know the phenomenon is real. We know that it is engaging with people. And we know that the way that that happens is something unknown. So even that is kind of a question mark. But because of that lack of data, I think, and people are desperate for answers, especially if they're themselves an experiencer of any anomalous phenomenon. They want to know what happened. Like, do they need to be scared? Do they not? What does it mean for the future? And so I think people often will grab onto a narrative that kind of aligns with their worldview. And then once they're locked into that, that's when the problems really start. And because then if some new information comes in that threatens it, they'll respond with aggression. Because that comes out of fear. It's a secondary emotional reaction, is anger. And you can see this for people who used to be religious, for example, and then changed their views. And were like, oh, I felt like I was being duped by the church or whatever. And if you go on any of the subreddits devoted to that, like, ex-Christian or ex-Mormon or whatever, you'll see how angry people are because they felt they were duped and they were scammed. And there's people who will prey on that too, and so we see that as well in the UFO community. There's groups that they're trying to co-opt experiencers who are looking for answers, and they're trying to pull them in. And sometimes they're straight up cults, but sometimes it's not quite that definitive. It's just it's a really complex thing. And also I want to remind people that like a lot of people can sound like bots when they're not. They're just people who are, who may also be scared, or they're just very firm in their opinions, and they're very active on Reddit. And again, that works to the advantage of the intelligence community, that, now you don't have any trust at all in who is on the other end, and then the accusations begin, oh, they're a shill, or the term glowy, I guess, it comes out of a game, I guess. I don't know. I'm too old for this.
It's interesting that you mentioned the religious piece there, because one of the, I don't say memes, but ideas that has emerged in the past couple of years, largely attributed to Diana Pasulka, is the idea that ufology, or the phenomenon, is essentially there's a religiosity or perhaps an emergent religion associated to that, and which implies sort of a belief structure. And I don't know how this is another piece that's one of these really gnarly questions. Like, once beliefs enter the picture, by definition, it almost thwarts your ability to critically look at things. So have you had any kind of encounters in navigating those spaces where, this is someone's belief structure, but it's impeding their ability to be critical and objective?
I mean, I think everyone, including myself, falls prey to that, I can give a very personal experience. So one of the things that I had started experimenting with a little over a year ago was EVP, electronic voice phenomena. And I won't take the half hour to explain how I got into it. Um, but it didn't take long before I realized something genuinely weird was going on there. And I was doing more and more experiments and playing around with it. And I ended up getting in touch with someone on Reddit whose partner had passed away unexpectedly, and they were really struggling and trying to be careful to navigate this so they don't reveal their any information that could be used to track them down. Actually, I don't have to worry about it because they deleted their Reddit account. They had posted on the reincarnation subreddit saying, "Is it possible my husband was reincarnated as a turtle in my backyard?" Now, you can imagine what sort of response that was getting from people. And so I just contacted this person. I was like, just so you know, you don't have to feel like, you're crazy for wondering about these things. And there's been a lot of research, scientific research that's been done on, afterlife experiences and reincarnation. I was like providing her some sources she could look at on that. We just had sort of a back and forth conversation about it. And then I was like, I do EVP work, and I could try something. If you wanted to make a recording and send it to me, I could kind of do my thing and see if I get anything out of it and send it back to her. And so she did. She sent me a 15-minute recording, and I got like 250 messages, discrete sentences or whatever out of this. And now I didn't know this person, and a lot of the stuff didn't make any sense to me. But I sent it back to her, and I was like, "Does any of this mean anything to you?" Well, it turned out it had the name of her husband. It had the name of her kids. She had previously been very devoutly religious, and it had content related to that. And you could see the ontological shock happening while we were having the discussion. And she was like, "Could this mean this? And what is this? And is this, And I was like, "I don't know what any of it is. And trust me, it is not straightforward. Please be very careful in taking this in. I don't know what is going on, genuinely. But it could be these things." And ultimately her response was to finally get furiously angry with me and tell me that all of it was crazy BS. And then she deleted the entire conversation we had on Discord. She deleted her Reddit account, everything else. And it was because she had formerly been a religious person. She had left, and now she was terrified of getting suckered again. And she saw the UFO thing and the spiritual components that seem to be related to it as another way that she was going to get suckered. And so her life experience gave her that response. I don't know where she's at right now. I think she's feeling in a safer space wherever she landed on it. But yeah, it took me a while, even though I'd been through all of this kind of stuff myself, and I'm around it all the time, to sort of figure out exactly what had happened. And I was like, man, I gave her too much too fast, and I didn't ground it enough for her. So that
Yeah.
there is a spiritual component to this stuff, and I don't know how it's connected. It seems to all be connected. Jacques Vallée, the cover of his book, Messengers of Deception, it's got like the masks. And they revised the book cover, and now it's like it's not even a person holding the masks. It's a shadow holding. Like even that is another layer of the sort of trickster element. We don't know what it is we're dealing with.
I appreciate one thing about your subreddit, and you kind of displayed it here with the story you just told, where the moderators often get involved with folks who have experiences and seem to be on the raw end sometimes of processing that. Like, I remember one story in particular. I won't go into any great detail, but the person who reported it sounded really freaked out and was talking about some things that had happened that were really deeply unsettling to her, to them. And one of the moderators was like, "DM me, and let's have a conversation off the boards, and I can sort of help you, figure out ways to sort of think about this." And I thought that was profound, over the top as far as what a lot of moderators would do on a lot of subreddits. And I wonder if you could offer up I mean, I don't want to, like, sort of the generic statement you'd make to someone who is having some experience like this that they can't quantify as either religious or extraterrestrial or any of those things. What do you tell people who were previously skeptical but are now encountering this strange thing and they don't know what to do with it? What can you say to help ground them or give them some direction forward?
First of all, I want to give a shout out to the co-founder and co-moderator, Oak Driocht. He's in Ireland, and I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that right. He was almost certainly the one who DM'd this person.
He
And
was. He
that's
was.
that's what he spends all of his time doing, is connecting with people one-on-one, often on video calls or audio calls, and just sort of talking them through it and, calming them down. And the biggest way of doing that is just saying, look, you're not alone. Like, no matter how wild the thing is that you think you experienced, chances are somebody else has experienced something similar to